It began like any other day in the quiet suburb of Bay Village, Ohio, the kind of town where front doors were left unlocked, kids rode their bikes to school, and nothing truly terrible ever seemed to happen. But on October 27, 1989, all that changed. A young girl named Amy Mihaljevic disappeared after school, and what followed would haunt the town and the nation for decades. This is the story of a murder so brutal, even seasoned FBI agents struggled to speak about it. It's a case that introduced millions to the realities of child abduction, ushered in a new era of investigative techniques, and left behind a trail of heartbreak and unanswered questions. From the moment Amy vanished to the grim discovery months later, this case became a touchstone in the annals of American true crime. And yet, after all this time, one question still remains. Who did it? Amy Mihaljevic was a 10-year-old fifth grader, bright-eyed, cheerful, and beloved by her friends and family. On the morning of October 27th, she wore a green sweatsuit and carried a denim backpack. Ordinary details that would become hauntingly significant in the days to follow. That afternoon, Amy mentioned to her friends that she was meeting someone at the nearby Bay Square shopping center. She didn't seem worried, just a little excited, you know? Witnesses later reported seeing her talking to a man outside the local Baskin-Robbins. That was unfortunately the last confirmed sighting of Amy alive. By that evening, panic set in. Her parents were quick to call the police, volunteers gathered and flyers were printed and distributed statewide. Her disappearance, well, it became national news within days. TV anchors, news bulletins, press conferences, everyone was talking about the missing girl from Bay Village. But behind the scenes, investigators were already deeply troubled. They had a few chilling leads. Amy had recently received a strange phone call. The caller claimed to work with her mother, and told Amy to meet him to help buy a gift. It was a calculated move. Someone had used emotional manipulation to lure her. That single detail shifted the investigation into something far more sinister. It wasn't until February 8, 1990, more than 100 days after Amy's disappearance, that her body was discovered in a desolate field in Ashland County, nearly 50 miles from her home. A jogger spotted what looked like fabric sticking out of the snow. It was Amy. The crime scene was immediately sealed off. Her body had been left in a remote area, concealed just enough to avoid detection during the winter months. The autopsy revealed the horrifying truth. Amy had been struck in the head with a blunt object and then unalived by stabbing. She had likely been held captive for a brief period before her life was taken. It's a chilling thought that lingers in the mind, isn't it? The discovery hit the community like a second wave of grief. The image of Amy, once full of life, now a statistic in the growing file of American child abduction cases, was too much for many to bear. Candlelight vigils were held as people gathered to mourn and remember. Grief counselors were dispatched to her school, offering support to those struggling to cope with the loss. Her parents, Margaret and Mark, appeared publicly only once more, to plead for justice. Their voices, filled with sorrow and determination, echoed the community's desperate need for answers. And for investigators, the brutality of the scene left them stunned. One detective was quoted as saying, "I've seen a lot, but this one stays with you. It gets in your head and doesn't let go." The FBI and local law enforcement collaborated on the case, compiling more than 20,000 leads over the years. One detail continued to haunt them. How did the killer know such personal information? The call Amy received wasn't a random attempt. It was a planned, precise act of manipulation. They believed the killer had access to a company directory where Amy's mother worked. Several other girls in the Cleveland area reported receiving similar phone calls in the weeks prior. Someone had been practicing, testing their story, fine-tuning their strategy, looking for the right victim. Amy had been chosen. Thousands of tips were pursued. Men who lived nearby, had criminal records, or matched the composite sketch were interrogated. Vehicles were searched, polygraphs were conducted, but the case remained unsolved. Then came the DNA era. Biological evidence recovered from the scene was re-examined using new technology, but the killer had either been too careful or too lucky. No usable DNA profile was ever extracted. Still, there were patterns. Investigators noticed that Amy's killer had removed her underwear but hadn't committed the type of assault they initially feared. It pointed to a complex psychological profile. This wasn't just an act of violence, it was control, power, predation disguised as affection. And the psychological burden was massive. Not just for Amy's family, but for those investigating. FBI profiler Harold Koplar reportedly suffered burnout after working on the case. Another detective described having recurring dreams of Amy calling for help. The horror didn't end with the discovery. It echoed in the lives of those trying to bring her justice. Amy's story didn't just shatter her family, it traumatized a generation. Parents in Bay Village, once carefree, now rehearsed emergency drills with their children. Schools implemented stricter pickup procedures. Stranger danger wasn't just a slogan, it was a daily reminder of Amy Mihaljevic. But perhaps the most haunting impact was on her classmates. Children who had grown up beside Amy were suddenly dealing with nightmares, anxiety, and survivor's guilt. One classmate later admitted in an interview that she couldn't walk through a shopping center without scanning every face, terrified she might see the man from the composite sketch. And then there was Margaret Mihaljevic, Amy's mother. She became a quiet, enduring symbol of maternal grief. She never gave up hope that the killer would be found. Until her passing in 2001, Margaret remained a fierce advocate for Amy's memory. Her death was a devastating blow to those still fighting for answers. Even after decades, Amy's case remains active. Law enforcement continues to investigate, armed now with better forensic tools and fresh tips. In 2013, authorities announced they had a new person of interest, but no name was revealed. A few years later, journalist James Renner published a book about Amy's case, diving deep into every available detail and proposing several theories. His work stirred debate. Some praised his tenacity while others accused him of interfering, but it reignited interest in the case. Renner's investigations revealed something even more disturbing. The man suspected by many had allegedly interacted with multiple young girls using the same manipulative tactics. He was never charged. And that silence, compounded by procedural errors and lack of evidence, has left many in Bay Village believing justice was never truly served. More than 3 decades have passed since Amy Mihaljevic was taken, and still, her killer walks free. But the case is not forgotten. In police departments and in living rooms across Ohio, Amy's face remains. Her story, her memory, and her family's cry for justice persist. This isn't just a story about one tragic event. It's a reflection of our society's failure to protect its most vulnerable, and our determination to keep trying. If you know something, say something. Even after all this time, a single detail could unlock the truth. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary powerful, please like, share, and subscribe. Help us bring more untold stories to light and never let these victims be forgotten. Stay aware, stay informed.